right. Welcome, everybody, to the Walk the Walk podcast. I'm joined with Andy Graham
Good morning.
and Jake Sorofman.
Hey there.
And I'll just do a quick intro for Jake. When I first met Jake, he was the chief of research for a little company called Gartner. I've just always been impressed with his down-to-earth vibe and the way he's able to take complicated ideas and really see through the noise and simplify those. And it's almost like he can predict the future. It's like he's like Neo seeing the Matrix with market data and kind of where the world is going. He's been working with a lot of companies over the years that have really obsessed over customer success, employee experience, and obviously holds customer experience and employee experience in really high esteem. Jake's currently the chief marketing officer at Vizier, and they're a recognized leader in people analytics and planning. Jake has worked in other explosive companies like Pendo and as a chief of marketing there, or chief marketing officer there, and just brings a wealth of experience to the table. And we're so excited to have him on here. Jake, welcome to the show. And, please tell us a little bit more about what you're up to lately.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here. Great to see you as always. And
good to see you.
Great to meet you, Andy. What am I working on? I actually just got back from 2 very intense weeks on the road. We were at HR Tech 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas, which is kind of our Super Bowl. And last week I was in Paris or this week, it all runs together. I was in Paris at Unleash, which is another big, major conference where we're, showing up as a brand, as an organization, big prospecting event for us, big thought leadership events. So it's an intense time. It's a really good time to be at Vizier. Just to give you a little bit of context on what we're all about, is we help companies to better understand their employees. And if you think about it, there's no single, for most companies, financial investment that's more significant than your people. But as importantly, there's no single lever that's more significant in driving innovation, change, and growth for your organization than your people.
Yep.
Despite that, most companies are kind of flying blind. They just don't have a great read on their employees. Maybe they have employee pulse surveys and they can measure engagement score, et cetera. It's a very incomplete picture. Doesn't necessarily correlate to outcomes or impact or performance or even productivity. It's just a proxy for happiness. But how do you know the impact that your employees are having on the business? And as importantly, the impact the business is having on your employees, because people aren't robots and you can't just squeeze the next drop of juice out of the lemon and expect that to be motivating to humans. So a long way of describing what we're all about, which is really illuminating the employee from all dimensions for the purpose of making better hiring decisions, promotion decisions, retention programs, ensuring that you're compensating people fairly, understanding diversity, equity, inclusion, and applying a workforce strategy at scale across your organization based on real data, which is such a obvious thing and so fundamentally absent in the world of HR and workforce for many companies.
So this is like creating kind of a direct line to profitability in some cases, because you're looking at those drivers. I mean, gosh, turnover is costly. Hiring the wrong people is costly. Losing the right people is costly. Huge. So that's a big part of, I kind of think, a company is putting out a work product, and it's like any other product. Somebody could choose to spend their career working for Anthrowear. They could choose to spend it working elsewhere. And you're actually just instrumenting some of those interactions and, kind of showing what's a good fit and where to continue investing.
Yeah, that's right. So what are the profiles and backgrounds that equate to success within specific jobs or roles within our organization to inform who and how you hire, understanding people's career paths, how to make them successful internally, understanding their skills. So what are the skills we have? What are the skills we need? Where are the gaps? How do we apply learning and development programs to close those gaps? How do we hire in a targeted way to close those gaps? How do we ensure we're not just retaining people, but retaining skills? Because ultimately we're trying to, we sell to very, very large companies that are facing the same sort of disruptions and opportunities as any other company. And they recognize the skills that they have in the building today are not necessarily the skills that are going to make them successful in the future. So how do you apply data to that to make better decisions about how you hire, how you retain, and how you reskill to make your company resilient and competitive in the future?
That's awesome.
And it's a first step in great service design, right? Which we do a lot of around us. And our job as leaders is to create a great experience for our team so that they can create a great experience for our customers. And so when we're building a great environment for them, that's a great way to go. I wish small companies could afford to use something like Visier.
Yeah.
There's just not enough data probably to feed it. So
that's true. Well, we actually have a business where we resell our technology through other HR SaaS products.
Yep.
So in combination, there are about 40,000 companies that use Visier's technology either directly or indirectly to them.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're helping even small companies. I know we're helping small companies. And there's a lot of common sense things that you can do that I think are just kind of missed or lost in translation around, like, as you said, ensuring that employees have a great experience within your organization. That's going to manifest in how they show up in serving your customers. To me, that is common sense. It's something that's often underappreciated and underinvested in.
I have a question for you as a marketer, since you are the marketing officer. And I think it's interesting when we talk about CX. I also am a marketer. I also work in sales for my agency, obviously. So that's what, the leader of an agency always does. But I'm curious how you connect the dots between what you're offering in your marketing and in your language and in your sales process, and how that trickles down through the customer experience once they get there. There's always a disconnect.
There is often a disconnect. That's absolutely true. It's a great question. There is a steel thread that you need to trace between the products you build, the promises you make through marketing and sales, and then the value you realize in the relationship, and ensuring that there is a steel thread that traces a line through all those things. Easier said than done, but a lot of it starts with sort of the ethos or culture of your organization, and ensuring that there is a close connection and a strong fidelity between the product and the promise. So that's first thing, and we actually do that extremely well, sometimes to a fault as an organization, is we don't get ahead of our skis. We don't market vaporware. We don't sell product that hasn't been proven. And then, the trickier part, in my opinion, is the connection between pre and post sales. So the sales organization and customer success, because obviously in a SaaS environment, you need to continue to prove your value over and over again. So ensuring that you've what you're promising is also what's being realized, and that you've organized in a way that ensures that the sales team has made the appropriate promises to the customer, and that it's documented and it's understood through the handoff to post-sales customer service, or customer success rather, to ensure that there's a program to drive the delivery of that promise in that customer relationship, and a real responsibility to ensuring that it comes to life. Because too often at renewal time, we look back at what was promised, and there's this dissonance between the promise and the reality. Kind of lost the thread. And companies that aren't able to maintain that thread are very vulnerable in this environment.
It seems like that handoff between sales and marketing, because we've talked about this before. Really, customer experience happens at every interaction with the brand, including the first interaction with the brand, or
Totally.
like everything about that. So that marketing, sales, the delivery of whatever service and product, the incentives have to be aligned for them to sell to the right customers where they can see value and all this. But that, like, the first point that seems to break often is going from, all right, we think this is a good option, the buyer's ready to sign, and kind of the time to value in the organization, how that initial change management works to just install that product or service. And then, the ongoing sense of, we're not really sure when or why our current customers started shopping. Is it just around a contract renewal? Did we fumble the ball somehow?
Right.
A lot of those moments are times where you can, get back ahead and have a positive customer experience. But those things seem to they're like the hardest to, they're the hardest to see sometimes. And, I think especially in the way organizations are set up, you've got people that have sort of their own domain where they have a lot of control. I'm sure, as a CMO, you have limited control over what happens on the delivery side. How do you have those conversations in a successful, well-run company like, Visier, to ensure that kind of continuity and that steel thread?
Yeah, it's such a good question, John. And I'm not going to suggest that we always get it right, but we have a shared outside in perspective on the customer, the value we're promising, and what we hold ourselves accountable to ensuring they're realizing. And that manifests in how we train our salespeople, and how we incentivize our salespeople, what we market and how, and then the programs that we apply to driving implementation, adoption, and value realization post-sales. So again, we're not always 100% successful in getting all those pieces right, but it is sort of the locus of our responsibility as a leadership team to understand that whole experience outside in and what we're trying to achieve for our customers, ensuring that we're building the right teams, the right programs, the right incentive structures to optimize all those things. And importantly, to illuminate that what I just described for people who may otherwise get a bit lost in their silos, right? Because as a company scales, you end up narrowing responsibility and specializing functions. And it's easy to get lost in what I call the internal madness of how a company does things and become very inside out and kind of lose perspective on what you're actually trying to achieve and for whom. So it's just a continuous reminder of why we do what we do and how the pieces connect.
It's almost like like specialization is good. Obviously, you can't expect everybody to have, some deep understanding of, marketing or sales and product and engineering and design. You have to specialize. But some of those larger topics really can become a cultural thing. Everybody has some kind of business development responsibility. Mm-hmm. What do you mean? I'm just a software engineer. Mm-hmm. Well, any interaction you have with a client, you just have to show up the right way, or, raise your hand if you see something, say something. That, those kind of things can be become cultural, and they're very broad and general. Across those specialties, which is interesting.
100%. And these are overused words, but I think that for me, the watchwords are curiosity and empathy and accountability. So being curious about the problem that we're trying to solve and being open and actively listening, as opposed to having a fixed mindset and being arrogant, presuming the solution as opposed to listening, really understanding, and empathy obviously is part of that too, walking in the customer's shoes and really caring. And then accountability is holding yourself accountable to delivering on those things. In the absence of those three things, you have a very inside out company in a very siloed organization.
Yep.
Complexity is easy and simplicity takes intention and is very difficult, right? And so as companies scale, it's very easy for everything to become very complex and very, everyone learns the inside, the process and the how, but we forget about that. We have to keep it simple and keep focusing on the why and the outcomes.
So true. That's really well said.
Well, one of the things that I was interested to talk to you about is, I think in way back in 2020, I think you were working, for Meta CX at the time, which was continues to fascinate me as a company, and a really great experience working with you on some stuff there. You wrote an article about how retention is the new growth strategy in 2020, when VCs were still just pouring out money left and right, and you have so many companies in this growth at all costs mindset yet still. And now it's late 2023, and we've had this reckoning where now I think, especially from a cost of cash standpoint and a VC standpoint, it's like, hey, you guys need to figure out how to extend your runway. And there's been this pressure to start running your business like, a more mature business, caring about things like profitability and EBITDA over, market expansion and growth. And so you seem to be a little bit of a prophet there with, this retention, push that you were making. Where does that come in now? I mean, how are companies starting to think of, I've got to really take care of the customers I already have. I deeply care about customer experience. How is that showing up in the C-suite, and how are those turning into goals and strategies?
It's a great question, and I appreciate the compliment, but I also I'm reminded of something that someone once told me, which is being right but getting the timing wrong is the same as being wrong. So it really is all about timing. I do think retention is the new growth right now, for sure. When there are macroeconomic headwinds and pressure to contain costs, every dollar spent is coming under scrutiny, and that means a lot of SaaS apps are getting fired. There's a lot of pressure on proving your value, and that there's a lot of pressure toward vendor consolidation. Maybe good enough is good enough.
Yep.
And the pendulum has swung from best in class to sort of full suites in some cases. That means that companies really need to be mindful of the value they're delivering to the customer, and that value is understood. It's documented, it's measurable, it's understood, it's validated. And I think, everyone's in that position right now. I can't think of a single company. There probably are some that I'm not thinking of based on other tailwinds that they're experiencing in the market. But certainly most companies are up against that challenge today, and need to really lean into what it takes to prove your value to a customer, because the scrutiny is both higher, and there's also new stakeholders who are being brought to the table. CFOs are getting more involved. IT is getting more involved. So it's changed the conversation. It's like you may have sold the value to your initial champion, and they may love you, but ultimately they don't necessarily write the checks and make the decisions in this sort of environment.
CFOs are really sticking up. Oh, sorry, Andy.
Yeah, they are. I was going to say it's also been such a mass influx of competition in the marketplace, such that some of the big players in this space where I'd say, we can't move off this, or these clients can't move off these platforms, now have 15 different options that they can choose from. So it's been a strange, 5 years of people saying, wait, we're not that deeply embedded here. We could make a move. So,
and even if you have the potential of differentiating and having materially better value for the customer, there's a huge difference between theoretical value and value realized.
Yep.
And that goes back to how we prescribe programs. To your point earlier, John, on change management, sometimes it's not about the features you have. Many times it's not about the capabilities. It's about how do you change behavior within an organization so they can unlock that potential value. And the onus is on the vendor, because it's often this impedance mismatch between the promise you're making and their ability to consume it and metabolize it within their organization. And they don't often know how. So they're looking for vendors to prescribe the path.
Yep.
And some of these SaaS installs that's a big change.
It is.
Does it put pressure on the sales and marketing side? Does that put pressure to narrow the ICP and only sell to the customers you think are going to be able to realize the value?
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. Yeah. How do we segment in a way that ensures that we're acquiring the right business that we can scalably, repeatably deliver value to and renew consistently? 100%.
Change management ends up being a big deal with what we do in the custom world too, and with large projects. It's kind of down to the point where we'll kind of scare people a little bit with change management. Hey, this is a really big deal. We can make you the best thing that perfectly matches the way your people work.
Yeah.
And if we don't take change management seriously enough, you won't hire us again because you won't see the value in what we do. And so there's even a concept of killing a deal, even if it's everything else is perfect about it, if they don't have that change management piece in place, because without the training and the installation going well, which is, we're not a change management firm. Maybe we should look at that as a service offering.
We ask every client we talk to, what went wrong with your last agency? What do you think the problems were? Why didn't it work out? Right. And when you start hearing them talk about these problems, you're thinking, we're going to have the same problems. It's not us. This is what's going to happen, because you haven't adapted to how you should be working with an agency. So, yeah.
Completely. If you think about also, the CAC payback, the first year of a subscription-based relationship is not profitable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you set that relationship up from the start to ensure that you're able to make it profitable? And that does start with targeting and understanding of where you can be successful. I love that point.
Mm-hmm. So you advocate for treating customer success as like a company-wide goal. And we talked about empathy and accountability, curiosity, but let's talk about like practical terms. What does that look like? How do you actually foster that sort of holistic approach and ensure the alignment between the different stages in sales and customer success?
Yeah, it's it starts with a shared vision for how that comes to life in the respective functions, and really kind of animating it through regular communication, and just envision, as I say, that I'm envisioning our annual kickoff and our monthly all hands meetings, and it's always coming back to those things so people can see not only the executive commitment to the principles, but how it comes to life and how it cuts across the different functions.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just to kind of remind them of that steel thread, and to energize and animate or mobilize the energy behind it within the company.
I like that. Was it Jeff Bezos who used to bring a like cardboard cutout of an avatar of their target customer profile to meetings? I think about doing something like that all the time, because we so often are having conversations and we have to start going back to, but what are clients actually like here? What's important to them in this conversation? So
we also, and this is one area where marketing does contribute to this very directly, is we create experiences for our customers, whether it's through our customer advisory board, our annual customer conference, but at any kind of big trade show or event like the ones we've had over the last 2 weeks. We bring them together in, sort of these intimate forums where we can hear what they have to say and connect with each other on a level that you wouldn't in a traditional business relationship. And it's incredibly insightful, the sort of learnings that you walk away with having spent that time with customers, really getting to know them more personally and in a setting where they're willing to be open is incredible.
Yeah.
How do you get that feedback loop? You hear these deep insights because you sat a customer down and you've talked to them, presumably with open-ended questions, and you're asking, what else, and going deep. How do you take that, synthesize it into a way that's ingestible and feedback to the right people in a large SaaS company?
It's a very good question, John. I don't know if I have a perfect answer. A lot of it is giving them a lens into it firsthand. They need to see and feel it for themselves. So the ability to capture it and have them witness it firsthand, I think, is an important part of it, because there's a huge difference between, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about how we might, we will distill it and turn it into a set of actions and priorities, but you lose the humanity. It's very easy to lose the connection between the jobs to be done, the individuals and their aspirations, goals, motivations, beliefs, all that stuff that only comes to life when you're able to witness it yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different ways at it. Of course, distilling it into an operating plan is an important part of it, but it really, the energizing element is really getting to know the customers and hearing it from them firsthand.
A few times we've run into, on the professional services side, you show up with a lot of synthesized data, and if I'm presenting it to you, sometimes it's hard for you to see how much work went into, getting to a clear, simple statement or outcome or thing we should do, a recommendation.
Totally.
And we've actually involved stakeholders before that are pretty high up in the organization that ultimately have lost touch a little bit to the humanity, because it's gone through so many filters before it gets to them. And we say, hey, why don't you join us for this customer, interview? It doesn't take much of their time, but it's a way to just reconnect those, the humanity of it. And they see somebody that's obviously distressed about this one thing that happened. Or they we just interviewed some folks that were taking calls at like 2 a.m. totally outside of the scope of their job because they felt, oh, there's your dogs.
The dogs.
Luckily I've got headphones on, so my dog didn't go nuts. But they, you take the president of the company, and at that point we just had them listen to a recorded interview where this person is literally crying and saying, hey, these people have nobody else to call. Of course I'm going to pick up the phone. And they deeply care about providing the service for the good of the company, because they feel like they're doing a valuable job helping somebody find meaningful work. And the president of the company is just 12 steps removed from that. So sometimes, reconnecting those human lines really does a lot for, the what things end up carrying the most weight.
It really does. And also the good things. You see the things that get people excited, that they're just super invested in, and the impact that they believe that will not only have on their organizations, but their careers. I think back about, the rise of some of the marketing automation platforms, and we experienced this a bit at Pendo in the product world, where teams were like marketers, in the case of Marketo, Eloqua, HubSpot, et cetera. They were building their careers around those platforms, and they wore it as their badge of pride. Same with Pendo, right? We're also seeing this to a degree within the world of HR and HR operations, where there are these people analytics functions within large organizations that their role and goal is to bring insights to the organization to make better people decisions. And when you give them the tools that allow them to find those unobvious insights, surface them, connect them to real value, and put them in the right hands, it's incredibly motivating because they've been, they're kind of, it's not the mainstream way of thinking about HR.
Yep.
And they see themselves as change agents within HR. And we're part of that change in the same way that Marketo and Eloqua and HubSpot were change agents for marketing.
They're finding meaning and purpose in the mission of the company.
Totally.
And the job that they're doing.
Totally.
It's a big overlap.
Yeah. And that's exciting. That's the part that I get very, very excited about, is when you see that, you feel that sort of energy. That's incredibly motivating. You want to do more for them.
I love that. I'm curious how that's playing out with what's going on in the world right now, and the number of open to work banners I'm seeing on LinkedIn, and the number of layoffs happening, and how we're maintaining a culture where people are still excited about the mission.
Totally.
When they're coming from a fear-based sort of, background of, I don't know how long I'll be here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's every company's responsibility to build connection with their employees.
Yeah.
That starts with understanding them. So data can be used for good, and it can be used for less good purposes if it's misunderstood or misapplied. But we think, first and foremost, you need to understand your employees, and then the responsibility is on you to use that data appropriately to ensure that you're building the right experiences for your employee, you're creating the right engagement with the work and the value that people are creating. There's kind of one school that says, okay, you shine light on human performance, and people are going to misuse that for the purpose of, as I said, like squeezing more juice out of the lemon. But there's another view that says, by tracing that thread, you're able to show people what value they're creating and help them to create more value, because ultimately everyone wants to deliver value. I've never met someone yet who wakes up thinking, I don't want to do anything for this company today, and I expect remuneration in return. Like, who thinks that way? I think most people want to do good. They want to do great work. They want to know they're adding value and get rewarded accordingly. And we're able to help managers show the relationship in ways that both identify gaps that can be coached to, and also encourage behaviors and activities that unlock value. And that's a win-win.
Yep, I agree.
Love it.
I like your shirt, John.
I really appreciate that we chose such similar wardrobes today.
Yeah.
It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, Jake, thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
I enjoyed it. It's good to see you, John, and great to meet you, Andy. And
it was nice to meet you too.
Yeah, enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.